I worked for IBM for 7 years. That taught me more about bureaucracy than anything else in my life. And I hasten to add, I didn't volunteer, I was conscripted. They bought the company I worked for. We were an Anglo-Dutch systems house. We were actually the company they bought to create the prototype for what became IBM Global Services. So we were a successful acquisition. But for those of us in data sciences, it was a bloody nightmare. They phoned us up on the Friday, they had acquired us by the Sunday. We went from a 3-level hierarchy, small, 2 cultures. Dutch and English are very different cultures, and I was Welsh, so we stood on the side of both, right? And then suddenly you're in this international conglomerate with so many levels of management, you don't even know who you report to anymore. And the first thing they did was to charge us for coffee and ban alcohol. Now, this is completely unreasonable. The coffee alcohol cycle is essential to good software development. Nobody should be expected to speak to users without alcohol first. You then need coffee to sober up, and then you need even more alcohol because users never want what you can prove they asked for when you deliver it. They now discover they want something else instead. I'm going to come back to that one again in a minute. So either way, we got a bit pissed off with this. It wasn't much fun, but we worked our way around it, and we basically hired meeting rooms where people would bill us for the meeting room and wouldn't mention the coffee and the alcohol. All right? There's ways around bureaucracy. Then it got worse. They told us we couldn't buy food for staff anymore. Now, by now I'm a C-level executive, all right? That means I only see clients when they're really very angry. If you don't know this, the higher you get promoted, the more stressful a life you have, because you only ever see clients when they're absolutely, totally pissed off with the organization, right? So you're there in the crisis management role. And we'd learned by now that you didn't argue with IBM bureaucrats on the basis of customer need, employee need, logic, or anything else. None of that worked, right? The only thing which occasionally worked was a technique from philosophy called the Socratic technique. This is where you ask people questions till they contradict themselves and have to come around to your point of view. It's a very dangerous technique if you don't know it. I mean, Socrates finally had to go and drink poison because the people of Athens got a bit fed up of being constantly proving to themselves that they were wrong, all right? So it's a hazardous enterprise, but it's fun, all right, while it lasts. So we went and we said, okay, this is interesting. We would never have thought of banning food for staff. This is one of the real benefits of joining IBM. And then we discovered they didn't understand irony, so it became a deadly weapon. You could switch on and off in chat rooms with HTML code during conference calls. And we said, what do we do at 4 o'clock in the morning? I said, I'll give you a real case. I get called out at 4 o'clock. We got an emergency service running on VAX clusters. The VAX clusters are down. There's been an operating system malfunction on an upgrade. If it's not up at 9 a.m., not only do we have massive penalty clauses, but actually 999 calls won't go through. And I said, I'm a manager. I don't understand VAX clusters. That's way beyond me. All I can actually do is keep the employees motivated and awake. And I do that by buying them copious amounts of pizza and Coke. And they looked at me with this shocked expression on their face, and I realized it could have been misinterpreted. And I said, we do mean the drink, just to be clear on that. Did give us some ideas for real crises later on, but it's amazing what people will believe. So I've just come from California, which is always an interesting experience. So they said, okay. They said, well, we can understand you might need to do that. We'll agree that, provided you get vice presidential approval 48 hours in advance. Now, at this time, you breathe deeply. And you say, my God, we would never have thought of that. And then you start to realize that sarcasm is a weapon as well as irony. We said, what happens on the extremely rare occasion where we don't get 48 hours notice of a major crisis? Well, this is a Socratic technique, all right? You've just got to be patient, right? And then they said yes in a way which means no. Bureaucrats are really good at this, all right? So they said country general manager approval after the event. Now you know that means your expenses will disappear into IBM South Bank. They'll never be signed. If you complain about it, your name will start to appear on the wrong sorts of lists. You know those lists which are drawn up every quarter in service companies. So the practice emerged, and I hasten to add, I never did this, and nobody I knew ever did it, all right? We just wouldn't do this, but we heard about other people doing this. of over-tipping London taxi drivers. Because if you over-tip a London taxi driver, they give you a blank receipt. And I'm told that the blank receipt was then filled in for the amount of the food and coke bought for the staff. A parallel set of books were kept to prove that the staff had actually received a benefit, and the responsible manager took a bus and claimed the taxi fare. Right, now this is 20 years ago. I gave this example at a conference in Berlin a year ago and in Dubai a few months ago. On both occasions, people from IBM ran up and showed me their wallets full of blank receipts and said, "We're still doing that, did you invent it?" If you over-constrain a system which can't be naturally constrained, people find workarounds. Yeah, it's a lovely Scottish word, look it up if you don't know it, it's called being canny. It's being clever, in a sort of mischievous, sly sort of way. People will find a workaround, which actually means you're wasting a huge amount of energy.